Welcome back to the Yoga Well podcast. I'm your host, Chase Bossert. Today, I'm talking with Celeste Greene, who is a long-time practitioner of meditation and yoga, and who is also a yoga therapist at the Osher Center for Integrative Medicine at the Vanderbilt University Hospital. So, we've known each other for quite a number of years now, and so nice to have you on the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chase, for having me.
I am really interested in hearing a little bit about your yoga meditation story. How do you discover these things? And, I know you've spent a number of years living in Durango, Colorado as a full-time meditator, etc. So I want to know the story, please.
Yeah. Full-time meditator. I love that. It's so true. Our classes were 3 hours long every week, which, and lots of homework during the week. It was intense. But before we go there, let me go back. I was just telling this to someone yesterday, actually, a young person who was struggling with their life and their awareness of themselves in the context of their society that they were in is very different, right? And that was my experience. I grew up in a really affluent community where identity was tied directly to material possessions. And I, at a really young age, just found myself not fitting in and not wanting to fit in. And so I was very confused as to, if this is how life is, then I didn't really want to do it. So I was looking for something more that felt interesting. And we were required in high school, those of us who weren't athletic, to go to the Y. We were sent to the YMCA. And they, most of my days at the YMCA were, I went to the vending machine and got a Snickers bar, and then walked on the treadmill while eating the Snickers bar, talking with my friend.
That's a pretty decent PE class, I have to say.
I thought I won the lottery there. But one day, for whatever reason, I saw this yoga class, and I went, and I really enjoyed it. And I started to discover that what was being presented was how I already looked at the world and felt about the world. And I was finally seeing something that matched that when everything else didn't match it. So, of course, I'm like, what is this? I've got to explore this. And so that was I'm in high school, and then I went to college and did the whole...
Just a moment before you go there. So when you say something being presented that matched how you felt about the world, can you encapsulate that?
Yeah. I grew up really Southern Baptist, and I was in a really religious household and situation. And the religion aspect, I connected with the feeling aspect of it, but I couldn't connect with the concepts around it. And when yoga was presented with there's this, I don't even know if it was words. I'm not sure. It was a feeling of that there's something much bigger than the context that I was given that was square. I started to, it might have been a sense, it might have been something the teacher was saying, I'm not sure. I just remember being like, yeah, that, this big feeling, that's what I know. And, at the time I was having conversations with most of my friends who were, it was very common that gay people were going to hell, that, if you're not a Christian, you don't go to heaven. Some of these really clear, linear ways of thinking, right and wrong. And I think the main thing that was presented in yoga was that there is a lot of gray, and that there is a lot of space, and that there is something that's more important than these types of external labels.
I think this is really a really common way that people get turned on to yoga. Like they go to yoga for exercise, or like for you, just like, well, I have an hour to kill for PE, so I guess I'll go to the yoga class. I've been doing the treadmill, but and some sort of experience is there, and then the experience is compelling. And I think that this is part of a Western yoga story, that the experience is very powerful, but there's no context around it to explain what does that mean, or how does that work, or the concepts that are there are perhaps not as clear as they have been developed over thousands of years in India. And so we have this experience, and we go, whoa, what was that? I want more of that. And then we struggle to articulate, well, what is that exactly? And I think that this is one of the really major things that Mr. Desikachar's teachings gave, which are really clear context. This is who you are. This is what your relationship to the world is. This is how it works. This is what to do about it. This is how you'll feel. This is why you're feeling like that. And here's all the tools. And that the tools are given not in a way that's like you're saying, do this or burn in hell. Don't do that. Go to heaven. Like it's all given in a directional sense to help each person find what really is true for themselves, and to navigate that way. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, and I remember telling a friend something like what you're saying recently. It was just that I remember thinking, forgive. Like that's one of the teachings, is that you have to forgive people. But I remember thinking, what if you can't? Like, what if the forgiveness is not happening for you? And where is the practice around that? And there wasn't much for me. It was just kind of like do, and kind of left with some, I think a lot of people, including myself, left with judgment, because that can't happen, or, you're not there experientially. So that was a real pull for me also. The third thing I'll say about why yoga for me is that I had a really, which I'm even just now becoming more aware of, really unstable, traumatic childhood, and without much support at all. And when I found yoga, I found peace, and that's when you're in an extreme struggle, peace is precious. So as
True.
As I continued to, it was like I needed it to survive in a way, in that experience, in that situation.
Beautiful. So you're doing yoga all through the rest of high school. Are you going every day to the class now, or just several times a week, or?
I don't know. I can't remember. High school feels so long ago.
Yes, I agree.
I went a lot. I do remember.
Yes.
I went to college. Fast forward, graduated from college, asked for my graduation present to be teacher training. So I went to teacher training. Nothing really special. I just wanted to get started. And, of course, I chose one that was very open and fluid, because I had been in this very strict culture. And then moved to Colorado and started teaching. And started, at the rec center, and then eventually taught at a studio, and met through that and through the people in the town, I was introduced to my meditation teacher, who lived about 45 minutes outside of Durango, up on top of a mountain, and had a small group of people that he was teaching every week. And it was very much, you can come, but you can only come once or twice. You can only come once, and then you have to decide if you're here or not, And that was hard for me, but I did it, and it was. I didn't, again, like what I've loved about Vini Yoga is that I got really steeped in experience there and practice, not only in the lessons, but also in the day-to-day homework that I was mentioning that we were given. But there was no mental understanding or intellectual understanding.
So the experiential is very strong, but the informational or the conceptual structures that are like explaining, like, what are you doing and why, etc., all of that is insufficient.
Yeah, and just not prioritized, because the priority was something else. And that was such a joy, and also very difficult, extremely hard work. This is like work. But it was also a joy because I was learning so much inside. So yeah, and I lived in Durango for 10 years, and I plan to go. They host, we have these like weekend advances in New York and LA, so I'll go in February. My teacher there, his teacher was Hilda Charlton, who was like, close friends with Ram Dass and in that kind of world. And then her teacher was like Mother Mira and Sri Aurobindo and that lineage. So that was really my primary experience of meditation. And again, I appreciated it so much because it gave me the connection that I felt with religion without the confinements that I didn't feel were right for me. And on top of that, it allowed me to look at very intimately the parts of myself that were not congruent with other parts. And primarily, more than anything, that teaching is about very persistent kindness.
How beautiful. I think it makes complete sense to have a meditation tradition that is emphasizing the experience of meditating and doing the internal work, because like cooking or dance or music, etc., yoga, meditation, these are experiential teachings. They're experiential knowledge systems. So that makes total, complete sense. And I think also that kind of work can go on and on and on because the onion keeps getting peeled away, etc. So, but you left Durango, you came back to Nashville. Why?
Primarily because, two reasons. One was that I had an aging father who needed some support, and I wanted to come back to be around for the end of his life and help. And the second reason was that I started to have some high sensitivity that was getting in the way of me being able to live my life. And I didn't realize how bad it was until, I was walking through the street in Berkeley, because I was living in Berkeley at the time. I went to Berkeley before I went back to Nashville. And I was, my sister and I had gone to this amazing theater performance, and it had to do with social justice and equal rights. And that was kind of the undertone. And during the intermission, we stepped out for a break, and we were walking down the streets of Berkeley. And if you know the streets of downtown Berkeley, they're dirty. Like, they're pretty dirty. It's like a city, it's like downtown. You would never want to lay down on the floor.
Gritty, please.
Yeah, gritty. Okay, gritty. Yeah. And so I was just overcome. I couldn't contain the feelings of everybody that I was feeling. And I was trying to tell my sister, like, I need a break. Like, and I just face planted onto the wall and slid down this brick wall and just bawled I was lying on this gritty floor and just bawling, and I couldn't get up. And I realized, like, I'm going to need some help here. So yeah, going back to Nashville and finding other things started happening that, along those same lines, that were prohibiting from me being in the world like I wanted to be. And so I found, at the same time I was wanting to do more yoga study, and I couldn't find anywhere. I was looking and looking, I couldn't find anywhere, and somebody referred me to you and Yoga Well, and I started to go through that. And I don't know if you remember this, but the very first weekend after the session, I was like, I cannot do pranayama. Like, I can't even do any pranayama. I need to get grounded. And I think you referred me to my Ayurvedic practitioner. And that process of being with Yoga Well and getting a practice with my mentor and Ayurveda, like, changed my life. And it gave me structure and container to then direct the flow of energy that I had going on. So.
Yeah, my memory of that time is that you were having ecstatic experiences that meant that you couldn't really function in whatever mundane tasks that you were doing at the time, and that it was debilitating. And I think that it's.
I remember calling somebody, like, I thought I needed to go to the emergency room. It was so, like, I felt like I was, like, falling through the space. Anyway, and
I think I think it's important to say, because most people, a lot of yoga in the West is selling bliss.
Yeah.
It's selling, like, do these practices and get blissed out, and then your life will be great. And, it won't matter if you're in crappy situations, because you'll be feeling blissful and you can deal with everything just fine, etc. And that's actually not the actual real teaching. It's not bliss that is being the goal. The goal is peace, and there is a kind of there are blissful experiences, etc. But in Ayurveda, excessive bliss is called harsha, and it's a debilitating disease, or a disease symptom, or whatever you want to call it. So I remember in our first conversations, it's like, oh, so that's what's happening. Oh, okay. And then, like we do here at the Yoga Well Institute, I referred you to a teacher to give you a personal practice, and I also connected you with Manju in the Ayurvedic world. My wife is an Ayurvedic practitioner, so she plugged into a nice community there. And you are just starting the yoga therapy training. That was the first weekend in the yoga therapy training. And I remember it because I remember thinking, like, she has so much to offer, such a good background, so many experiences. I hope she sticks it out. And I know you were like, I don't know. We'll try. We'll see this. I don't know. And I think that went on for a few modules.
Did. That process taught me about commitment. And what I learned is that, and this, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but for me, commitment isn't something that you put on like a piece of clothing. It happened from the inside out. And it's like all of a sudden I was committed. I hadn't chosen from my head to be committed to this training. Although that's, that would have been ideal from the beginning, right? I was like, I don't know. And then at some point, it wasn't a question at all whether I was doing it or not. I was doing it. And I was committed 100%. And that happened, something that happens in me. And I think about that in relationship to partnership. I think about it also in relationship to one's work. I feel like sometimes, and myself included, I've gone into work being like, okay, I'm going to put this thing on and now I'm going to do it. And I'm going to figure it out from the front end and then implement it. And now I'm done. But it feels much more like I grow into it. And there's, there's this commitment that's just developing in me. And to a point where then I'm just like, it's not even a question.
It's so nicely stated. I think in terms of yoga concepts, the Sanskrit word that you're describing is Shraddha. And Shraddha is, as you well know, it's variable. Sometimes you can have very little, and sometimes you can have a lot. But this is not, Shraddha is oftentimes translated as faith, but it's not like a blind faith. It's not designed to be like, well, they tell you to do this, and so you believe that and, try to be a good little boy or girl and do it. It said, no, that's not Shraddha. Shraddha is something that, like, as you were just saying, it wells up from within and is a kind of conviction or a kind of confidence, a knowing, and that is very, when you have that and it's strong, it moves mountains. Nothing is impossible.
Yeah, and until that experience with committing to yoga, the process of committing, I had thought that commitment was something I did first. Mm-hmm. And that was always a struggle, because how do you commit to something if you don't know, if you don't, always felt like I was trying to put something on and then fit myself into it. Whereas the experience was much more like myself was fitting or growing into this thing. So that was really lovely. And it's been such a, I return to that experience often for myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So nice. So then the therapist training was 4 years because it got caught up in the pandemic and COVID and all that. So we didn't quite get to finish the last few modules in person. We had to do things. We had to do some things online, etc. When did you start working for the Vanderbilt Center of Integrative Medicine?
So our graduation was in April, and then I started working for them in November.
And what do you do?
I'm a yoga therapist there.
Yeah, what does that mean?
So I see patients. The way that the Integrative Center works is that most of the people come and they have very complicated diagnoses or multiple different illnesses that are interacting with each other. And they've gone to a lot of other doctors, and either they haven't found something that works for them, or they are wanting to take an alternative route, or they want to support what they're doing with alternative medicine, right? And so they come.
I was going to say that this is really true of a lot of integrative centers, is that they're kind of dumping grounds for the most difficult.
Yes, they are.
We don't know what to do with you. Exactly. Go to the integrative center.
Yeah. And honestly, I see patients that say exactly that their doctor said, like, well, I don't know, just try this. And they're very complicated patients, and they come in and they see a nurse practitioner and they go through their whole situation, and then they oftentimes will prescribe them, okay, like you need yoga therapy or you need acupuncture or massage therapy or PT or, and so then they get sent to me, and there's me and right now 2 other yoga therapists, and we have an hour and a half with them in the first session, and that's really where we're connecting with who they are and how they're presenting, their symptoms, assessing their abilities and their state of mind and their capacity to breathe and move. And then we start to develop a practice that's designed for them. And then I typically will see them in a week or 2 weeks following, and we start a relationship in that way. And some people, it's just a variety. Like some people, they can't do their practice at home for a number of reasons. And so they're coming to see me every week. And some people are really capable, but they're like, they maybe come in struggling with a high level of some sort of disability that they're able to, that we're able to focus because they have that, they're a bit more functioning. So it's a really wide population. But it's so fulfilling because I also get to be in conversation with the other yoga therapists, and we get to work on this kind of together.
Right.
Yeah.
So you are using breathing, gentle movements, attention games, meditation, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I've got to say something that I've been thinking a lot about. Of course, we're doing yoga therapy, and I'm thinking a lot about what tools are applicable and correct for them, and how that correct application, basically. But I'm also thinking, what I've also been noticing is that many people, that my personal meditation practice is almost primary, because many people come in and I just sit and, shut the door, and they might spend the whole time crying. And that my role is I'm in a healing role, and it doesn't always look like what I might think it looks like.
Yeah, I'm so touched. It's so easy when we discuss or talk about what our work is, or to get into technical things. Well, we start with the breathing here, or we really try to do a physical observation. One of the core meanings of the word yoga is linking. And Mr. Desikachar's favorite definition of yoga, or his professed favorite definition of yoga, was relationship. And I think that one of the things that's lost in many modern medicine contexts is the power of relationship. You have 6 minutes, you got to get all the information, you got to give them the thing and get them out, etc., as though the information is the primary thing that will heal people. And you're really highlighting how powerful presence and connection and being with somebody, how powerful that is. And what a motivator it is to actually feel heard and cared for, and like somebody would like you to improve. That's so, it's so powerful.
Actually, you're reminding me of like probably the best compliment I've ever gotten, most touching compliment recently. A patient in my private practice who I work with on a weekly basis and had a lot of trauma and was very, it was a lot at the beginning. We couldn't do anything really. But recently she's functioning in her life. There's a lot going on. And she just said to me, like, you're teaching me how to love myself by loving me, like by what you're doing with how you are with me. And I was like, that's everything, right? That's the thing that heals. And that's where I'm so thankful for my practice now, my yoga and my meditation practice, because it's like, it's the navigation and the presence interacting with another person. And that means that they can come in and yell at you,
And that happens.
And that I don't like that. And you're like, and it's like, oh, okay, no big deal. I always say that, no big deal.
Yeah.
So,
most people do not have a place in their life where they can have reasonable conflict, right? Where they can actually have their dislikes expressed, or whatever it is that is not working for them expressed and heard and navigated in a way that is not upsetting. And I think one of the actual big roles for us as yoga therapists or as yoga teachers is to be a place where that happens. And it's so powerful for somebody to come in and actually be heard, and then not have to have it be a big conflict and a forcing or this or that way. And in our trainings, we do all kinds of stuff about active listening and paraphrasing and whatnot. That is like helping the yoga therapist to communicate in a way so that the client, the student, knows that they have been heard, and they hear back what they said, and then they have the opportunity to revise it if it's not quite right. And I
use that all the time. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and not just in in the yoga session, like in our real life, etc. And but I see so often how people, when that happens, actually their whole state changes, their whole system relaxes, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, I still have the problem, but I don't have the problem of communicating the problem. And I can just relax into the problem, and it's such a big deal. I want to change a little bit here. Your favorite thing to be teaching is meditation. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And in fact, you're going to do a workshop for us coming up here, but probably by the time this podcast is published, it will be after the fact. But Yoga will have a meditation workshop at Yoga Wall. Why? What's the interest in meditation, or what's the what is it, having now done it for so many years? What are you trying to convey, or what do you want people to experience or know about meditation?
That's such a big question, Chase, because it depends on where the person is at, which I know is something you say a lot. But, I have been for a year or so teaching these like intro to meditations where it's just like, what is meditation? Let's just first get that clear, because I think there's a lot of confusion, which then leads to a lot of judgment and uncertainty about like what is going on out there in the world. So that's really exciting to me, to start being like, okay, let's talk about what the process is, which I've learned so clearly from you, and what the what are the techniques, what is the point, what are we doing here, how does it work, what are the stages, those types of things. And most people that get that information are like, whoa, I didn't have a clue. I didn't realize any of this. So that's exciting for me. But also but specifically how it links to our life and our acting in the world, our actions, is huge, which we were just talking about from my experience as a yoga therapist. This morning I was doing my yoga practice, and at the end I'm doing my breathing and meditation, and like a light bulb went off. I'm like, this is what I want to talk about when it comes to meditation, is that what is happening when we meditate is that there might be, like this morning, my partner is vacuuming, the cat is moving around, the dog is eating breakfast. There might be a lot of things going on in which my mind can put its attention on, and does in my day-to-day activities. And yet when I meditate, the act of directing my mind to a particular place and letting it, keeping it there or continuing to direct it there, all of those other things, it's not that everything stops, right? The vacuum is still going, the cat is still moving around, but they go to the background. And what is primary in my experience is something much more subtle. And all the it feels like tentacles for me. It's like my mind has all these tentacles that's going to the cat and the vacuum and the dog. And it's like all of those get pulled in and focused on this one subtle experience. And that happens in meditation. And maybe it just happens for a moment, and maybe it happens for an hour. Who cares? But the point is that then I'm in my day-to-day life, and somebody saying whatever about something, and somebody else is doing this, or I'm driving, but all of a sudden I know that place. I remember that place, and I have it in me. And then there's a way that I can strengthen the focus to stay with the subtle. And even, am I talking about being a yoga therapist? That is all that I'm doing. And so you can be with the subtle in relating to a person, in, walking my dog, in making a cup of tea, in talking to a friend. It's just like, it's a different way of living, and it makes me so happy.
And calm and functional, and not blissed out. And
exactly.
This word ananda, right, which is often translated as bliss. Ananda means the part, long A, is continual, and nand is the verb to be glad. So ananda, literally, if you break it down into words, rather than bliss, it really it breaks down into to be continually glad, right? So yoga takes you where? It takes you to ananda. It takes you to this place where you can be continually glad, which means that you can function in the world, which means that you can play your roles, you can do your duties, you can show up, etc. And at the same time that you're doing that, each place is opening into infinity and beyond. And whoa.
Exactly. And even more so, for those of us, which I think is everyone, that are interested in living authentically or like from a place that is aligned, it is the only way to find that. Because in this place that's more subtle that I'm talking about, and in the process of meditation, there's a pivot internally, right? We pivot from the external focus to the internal focus. And we strengthen our ability to listen and to even know what that feels like, and to actually have like a relationship with it and really begin to be intimate with it. And then when I'm moving through my days and something isn't aligned, because I know that other place so well, it's becoming quicker, I should say, to be clear about what is not a fit and what is.
It's so nicely said. For when I'm listening to your talk right now, so what I hear is an identity game, right? So from a yoga perspective, the main issue is wrong identity. What does that mean exactly? Well, it means that when I wake up in the morning, I think on my body and my mind, and all the thoughts that are going through my head, and what I have planned, and all of those things are, and then I walk into the kitchen and I don't even look to see what is my child, how did they sleep, how did they feel. I don't even look to see how is my wife doing, etc. I just go to the oatmeal or whatever, etc. I'm projecting all over, right? Because I'm operating from a particular identity. And then what the yoga does is it shows us, or it transports us, or it changes the identity that we're operating from. And then when you're operating from that identity, everything is different. How I perceive, how I move, how I communicate, everything.
This is, I always say that it's a different way of living, because what I mean by that is this is not something the world values. And so I even think about it, we're constantly even in the self-help, it's self-help is this external thing that you get. But actually, what I love about yoga and meditation, it's a turning inward, and the help is in there. The guidance, the identity that we're so much craving for. Who am I? And what is, when I'm confused, what is the right thing? And all those types of things. It's such an internal connection that will answer all of those questions. And if we haven't developed the relationship with it, then how could we even listen to it or hear it?
I think that as a professional yoga teacher now for more than 2 decades, I hate the question, what do you do? I hate it. Because when I say, well, I'm a yoga teacher, it's very hard to understand that yoga is a science of experiences that change how your system is functioning. So you still have the same body, you still have the same mind, you still have the same senses, you still have had the same history of experiences, etc. But through this process, how all of that functions changes. And that literally changes who you are and where you operate from. So, there's ways of saying, well, you're no longer operating from your mind, you're operating from your heart. That's a nice way to say it. But if you haven't gone through the process, you're not even clear about well, what is my mind and what is my heart?
Yeah.
And how am I going to be operating from my heart? I want to operate from my heart, but how do I get there, right? And what yoga as a process does is it gives us the experiences, it gives us the tastes of things that open up this ability to return to it. Mm-hmm. I'm a new dad. I know you know this. I'm a new dad. I've been a parent now for 1 year and 2.5 months. And I'm shocked by how poorly I perceive things. And I have been learning that this process of actually yoga or of meditation is actually just being. I don't need to solve. I don't need to plan. I don't need to do. I just need to actually be. And if I'm actually there, some things will be perceived that I would not have perceived before. And because I would have been planning, doing, trying to get something to happen, etc. And because I'm not doing, or because I'm not, trying to affect some plan or whatnot, because I'm just there, whole universes open up. And interactions go in these really interesting and deep and meaningful ways that I believe this is really the arriving in authenticity and really arriving in the essence of who we are, etc. And that's so hard to convey in the elevator of, yes, I'm a yoga teacher. You must be very flexible. I'm okay. Yeah, sure. I have some flexibility. But my flexibility is more around my relationships now than it is around my body or whatnot.
And what's so beautiful about that is like what we were saying earlier about others just needing presence. It's like that's the thing that does everything. We just have to get out of the way for it. And like you're saying, the doer and the action and the planner and that part just has to sit down.
In the second chapter of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, he gives avidya as the core problem, right? And avidya means a misperception. The second core problem is identity. So what is happening is the misperception that causes us to feel separate or feel distinct from other people or the relation or the context or the situation, etc., is actually the fundamental problem. And that when we through the process of yoga or through meditation, etc., we start to be able to see that, actually, that's not my identity. My identity is not Chase or not Celeste. It's actually, the identity has something to do more with presence and with just being open and responding to what arises, etc. As that happens, the illusion of being distinct from everything also gets pierced. Also, the illusion that, they're different from me, or, that situation doesn't involve me, etc. All of that also begins to be seen through, because just being present to something or somebody else being present to you, the connection is so deep and so there's a kind of unity there. And to come back, like this is how everybody, who goes into yoga or meditation, we all pretty much have the experiences first. And then how to describe it or how to say it is almost lacking in our culture. There's very few places that are actually explaining, well, here's who you are philosophically, and here's what you're doing, and here's how the thing works, and this is what you want to try to do, and it's not going to work, and so this and this and this is going to happen, so that you try to these other things, and why, etc. And for me, it's really like I'm continually in awe of like the depth and the breadth of like what Mr. Desikachar handed down through his teaching of yoga, because it continues to unfold and open, and it's like, whoa. Yeah. I was just going to do some yoga.
Yeah. I think that's what people think when they come to yoga therapy. They're like, whoa, hold on. I just was coming to do yoga. I was thinking, it was funny you said that about being connected and the veil kind of lifting of individual versus kind of togetherness. It's funny, this week in the sessions and people I was seeing, I kept having that feeling of like, is this just another version of myself sitting here? This person, this next person. It's like there's so much commonality, and there's just not even in personality. I'm talking about much more abstract things. And what is so beautiful about being a practitioner is that I have gotten the chance to be with those parts of myself. So here I am sitting across the room from someone who's showing up in this particular way. Oh, I know that one. Oh yeah. It's really great.
Yeah. So you are in the process of recreating your website.
Yeah.
Your current website is celestegreene.com,
Mm-hmm.
and green has an E on it,
Mm-hmm.
right at the end. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of E's in your name. You have 6 E's in your name.
I know. Isn't there, the E sound important in Sanskrit? What would you say about that?
Well, yeah. So in Sanskrit, E is said with the corners of the mouth going separate. Like, when somebody's going to take a photo, you tell them to say cheese, mm-hmm. right? So Celeste Greene, just saying the name makes you happy and smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're rebuilding your website, and your new website is Living Yoga. Mm-hmm. That's great. What a fantastic name.
Thanks. I like it too.
I mean that is really what we do. It's hard to convey the depth and impact that yoga has on someone, because when they begin to change how their body, breath, mind, behavior, emotion, etc., every aspect of their system is functioning, everything changes. Mm. And then at some point, the question is really like, how do we organize around this experience and practice of yoga, rather than how can yoga support and help me in my life? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Celeste. Thank you for coming out today and talking.
You're welcome.
Very interesting. And I really look forward to watching your teaching and being a part of that for the decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.